Hey, it's the preacher, and welcome back to part 2 of how to make corned beef except with deer meat. So what we're making is corned deer meat. It has been exactly 13 days since we began the process. Most recipes call for 10 days in the fridge, some 2 weeks. But I went with 13 days because tomorrow's Saturday, my wife will be home, the kids will probably be around, and I don't want to be in here boiling corned deer all day, so I'm going to do it today on Friday. We shot this buck on November the 9th, pulled the back straps out of it, and began brining them November the 9th. Today is November the 22nd. So let's open the lid up. They have set in the bottom of the fridge. I've made sure that they've stayed submersed. I've turned them over a couple of times, even though they were all submersed, just to make sure that everything was getting the brine to it, and nothing was just kind of pushed in out of the way. So let me bring you over here and I'll take the lid off and we'll have a look. Alright, let's pop the lid on this. Well, let's pull it up and see if we can look right down in it. Obviously you see some of the little peppercorns floating around in there. The meat has kind of turned a little softer pink color. Not nearly as dark red. The brine has turned black, and that's probably from pulling out blood and the brown sugar. There's our little end nuggets. Alright, now all we need to do is cook this, and once we boil it, it will be fully preserved. Now what I'm going to do is take a knife and trim off some of this membrane that's kind of loosened up. I might be able to pull it off, to be honest with you. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to give these a quick rinse under the sink, and that's just to wash off any of the brine, any of the brine. And after a quick rinse, we'll boil them. Bring you back when I get half this cleaned up. I've got 6.5 pounds here. I think six or 6.5. Anyways, I'm going to do it in 2 batches. I'll bring you back when I've got 1 batch ready to go in the water. Alright, I had my water up to a boil. I got a little bit ahead of me, so I turned it down. I've got it back on high. This is not a giant stock pot, but big enough. And I've got it about 2/3 of the way full. So to that boiling water, almost boiling water, I'm not adding any seasoning. I'm not going to cook any vegetables in here. All I'm wanting to do here is cook this meat so that I can store it. And so I'm going to place this down in that pot of boiling water. Here's the other side of that back strap. That's a little bit too big. So I'm going to cut this piece in half. There, you can see the rich red part in the center. And you can see how much that's changed on the outside from the brining process of corning it. Alright, we're going to drop that in there and that in there. That brings my water almost all the way up to the top. We're going to bring that up to a boil. We'll let it boil for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. And then I'll put a lid on it, turn it down to a simmer. We're going to let it go for about 1.5 hours. This is probably 3 pounds of meat in there. So we'll let it go for about 1.5 hours. I'll check it. I'll try to determine if it's done and fully cooked all the way. If it is, we'll start our second batch. Well, it's starting to boil. I'll go ahead and let that go for a few minutes and get the lid ready. And I'll see you guys in about 1.5 hours. We'll check on it. Alright, we're back. And it's been about 2 hours, probably, since we first put this on to boil. I've checked it about every 30 minutes or so. And I've kind of kept it at just a low boil like that. I'm cooking on electric range. Sometimes it'll do that. Sometimes it'll just kind of simmer. Let's take the lid off. See if I can do this one-handed without making a mess of things. Set this over here. Alright, you take the lid off. There's kind of what you end up with. Stir them around here. Really not much change, and the only way that you know they're done is they begin to start to loosen up and pull apart real easy. So let's set them on a plate. Anything that's boiled for 2 hours, you know, with these dimensions, should be fully cooked. If you cook it too long, you'll start seeing chunks of meat floating around there as they begin to break apart. You can kind of see that with this piece here. It's starting to come apart. Okay, how do we know it's done? Well, for one thing, it's really too hot to handle. But we can look at it and see that the meat is really, the strings of meat are really starting to pull apart. You always got to have a taste test. But this meat is really just kind of pulling apart with no resistance. Same for the edges here, they're just kind of crumbling off. You know, I know, let's just be honest, I know everybody doesn't like corned beef. But I also know this, there are grown men who still eat plain hamburgers and chicken strips when they go out to eat. I know that some of you, your mom probably still pinches off the crust around your bread. But for the rest of us who like adult food, get you a big deer steak. Corn it in a brine with pickling spice and brown sugar and salt and garlic for 10 days to 2 weeks and then boil it. The rest of you, have a grilled cheese. And if you don't like it, go shoot another deer. Give this away for Christmas. But I probably won't be sharing too much of this. It'll probably stay right here at the Smith house. I shouldn't talk with my mouth full, but I shouldn't be recording while something like this is laying in front of me. Hey, it's the Preacher, and welcome back to part 2 of how to make corned beef except with deer meat. Let's try that again. Hey, welcome back. It's the Preacher. Hey, it's